CEO's wife, Veronica Hayes, drove her sleek black Mercedes through the bustling streets of downtown Chicago. The rain had just stopped, leaving puddles scattered across the busy road. As she sped past, the car's tires sliced through a deep puddle, sending a wave of dirty water splashing across a young pregnant woman standing by the sidewalk. The woman, Emily Carter, gasped as the cold, muddy water drenched her clothes and clung to her swollen belly. Shocked pedestrians turned their heads, some whispering, others pulling out their phones. But Emily didn't move. She lowered herself onto the muddy roadside, her hands resting firmly on her belly, her eyes filled with quiet defiance. "I won't stand up," she said firmly, her voice trembling yet strong. "Not until the CEO himself apologizes." The crowd grew larger, murmurs spreading like wildfire. A pregnant woman, humiliated by the wife of one of the city's most powerful men, refusing to rise until justice was served. Veronica glanced back through her rearview mirror, her lips curling into a dismissive smirk. She didn't stop. She didn't care. But Emily's act of resistance had already lit a spark, and that spark was about to ignite a storm that no one could ignore. Emily sat firmly on the muddy roadside, her soaked dress clinging to her body, her hands resting protectively on her belly. The city's noise seemed to fade as whispers spread among the growing crowd. Some passers-by shook their heads in disbelief. Others murmured about the arrogance of the wealthy. "Isn't that the CEO's wife?" one man asked, pointing toward the disappearing Mercedes. "Yes," another replied. "Veronica Hayes. She thinks she owns this city." Phones were raised, cameras clicked, and within minutes, Emily's defiance became more than a local spectacle. It was a statement. A pregnant woman, humiliated yet unbroken, demanding accountability from one of the most powerful families in Chicago. A young journalist named Daniel, carrying his camera bag, pushed through the crowd. He crouched beside Emily. "Ma'am, do you realize this could go viral? Do you want me to share your story?" Emily's eyes met his. "Share it. Let the world see. I won't move until the CEO apologizes." Daniel nodded, sensing the weight of her words. He snapped a photo. Emily, drenched, defiant, and unyielding. And just like that, the spark grew into a flame. The city was about to witness a storm of drama, emotion, and truth. Miles Hayes, the powerful CEO of Hayes Enterprises, sat in his glass-walled office overlooking the Chicago skyline. His morning was filled with meetings, contracts, and calls with investors. He thrived on control, on the image of perfection his company projected. But that image began to crack when his assistant, Laura, rushed in holding her phone. "Sir, you need to see this," she said breathlessly. Miles frowned, annoyed at the interruption. "What is it?" Laura placed the phone on his desk. A video was already trending online. Emily Carter, drenched in muddy water, sitting defiantly on the roadside, refusing to stand until Miles himself apologized. The caption read, "CEO's wife humiliates pregnant woman, demands apology." Miles's jaw tightened. "Veronica," he muttered under his breath. Laura hesitated. "Sir, it's everywhere. News outlets are picking it up. People are outraged. They're calling it a symbol of arrogance and injustice." Miles leaned back, his mind racing. His empire was built on reputation. And now, one careless act by his wife threatened to unravel it. For the first time in years, Miles Hayes felt the weight of public opinion pressing against him. And Emily Carter wasn't moving. By noon, Emily's story had spread across Chicago like wildfire. News anchors debated it on live television, radio hosts dissected the arrogance of the wealthy, and hashtags flooded social media. Hashtag Justice for Emily and hashtag CEO Apology. On the roadside, Emily remained seated, her clothes still damp, her belly cradled in her arms. The crowd had doubled, now including activists, mothers, and even church leaders. Some brought her water, others umbrellas, but Emily refused to move. "This isn't just about me," she told a local reporter. "It's about respect. It's about dignity. If the powerful can humiliate the vulnerable without consequence, then what kind of city are we living in?" Her words struck a chord. A retired teacher named Mrs. Johnson stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "You're right, child. We've all been ignored by people like them. But today, you're standing, no, sitting, for all of us." Meanwhile, in the Hayes penthouse, Veronica scrolled through the headlines with irritation. "They're exaggerating," she scoffed. "She's just a nobody." But Miles knew better. He could feel the tide turning against him. Emily Carter wasn't just a pregnant woman on a muddy roadside anymore. She was becoming a symbol. Miles Hayes sat at the head of the long mahogany table in Hayes Enterprises' boardroom. His executives were restless, their voices sharp with concern. "Sir, this is spiraling out of control," said Richard, the CFO. "Our stock is dipping. Investors are calling nonstop. This woman's refusal to stand has become a national headline." Another board member leaned forward. "Miles, the public sees her as a symbol of dignity. If you don't act, we risk losing more than money. We risk our reputation." Miles rubbed his temples, frustration mounting. He had built Hayes Enterprises into a global powerhouse, but now one act of arrogance by his wife threatened to unravel decades of work. "Do you expect me to bow to a roadside protest?" Miles snapped. Richard's voice was steady. "No, sir. We expect you to protect the company. Sometimes humility is the strongest move." Miles glanced at the screen on the wall. Emily's image filled it. Drenched, pregnant, defiant. The crowd around her had grown into hundreds. For the first time, Miles realized this wasn't just about a woman on a muddy roadside. It was about the soul of his empire.
As Emily sat on the muddy roadside, her quiet strength began to intrigue the crowd. Reporters dug deeper, searching for who she really was. Soon, details emerged that added even more weight to her defiance. Emily Carter wasn't just any pregnant woman. She had once worked as a nurse in one of Chicago's busiest hospitals, known for her compassion and resilience. But after her husband, Michael, lost his job during a corporate downsizing, Emily had been struggling to make ends meet. Her pregnancy only added to the challenges. "She's not doing this for attention," Daniel, the young journalist, told a news anchor. "She's lived through hardship. She knows what it means to be overlooked. That's why she refuses to stand." The revelation spread quickly. People began to see Emily not as a stranger, but as someone who represented their own struggles, the layoffs, the humiliations, the times when the powerful ignored the powerless. Meanwhile, Miles Hayes watched the coverage from his office. Each new detail about Emily's life chipped away at his defenses. She wasn't just a protester. She was a mother-to-be, a symbol of dignity, and now a voice for thousands. The storm was growing. By evening, the crowd around Emily had grown into a small movement. Television vans lined the street, reporters held microphones, and police officers stood nearby to maintain order. Emily remained seated, her clothes stiff with dried mud, her face calm but resolute. Suddenly, a sleek black SUV pulled up. The door opened, and Veronica Hayes stepped out, her designer heels clicking against the pavement. The crowd gasped. "Emily Carter, this has gone far enough. Stand up and stop embarrassing yourself." Emily looked up, her eyes unwavering. "I'll stand when your husband apologizes, not before." The crowd erupted in cheers, chanting Emily's name. Veronica's face flushed with anger. "You think you can dictate terms to us? My husband doesn't bow to roadside theatrics." Daniel, the journalist, stepped forward. "Mrs. Hayes, the world is watching. Every word you say is being recorded." Veronica froze, realizing the cameras were trained on her. Her arrogance was now public, her dismissal of Emily broadcast live. Emily's quiet defiance had turned into a confrontation, and the CEO's wife had just walked into the storm. The confrontation between Veronica Hayes and Emily Carter was replayed across every television channel that evening. Clips of Veronica's dismissive tone spread online, fueling outrage. Commentators called it a clash between arrogance and dignity. Emily, still seated on the muddy roadside, grew weaker as the hours passed. Her pregnancy made the ordeal harder, but her spirit remained unbroken. Volunteers brought her food and blankets, and mothers held her hand in solidarity. Meanwhile, inside Hayes Enterprises, Miles Hayes faced a storm unlike any he had ever known. Investors threatened to pull out, sponsors demanded statements, and the board insisted on immediate action. Laura, his assistant, spoke softly but firmly. "Sir, this isn't just about reputation anymore. This is about humanity. If you don't step forward, you'll lose more than your company. You'll lose the respect of the people." Miles stared at Emily's image on the screen. Her defiance, her quiet strength, and the crowd's unwavering support pierced through his pride. For the first time, he felt the weight of responsibility, not as a CEO, but as a man. The decision was clear. Miles Hayes would have to face Emily Carter and the world. The following morning, the streets of downtown Chicago were packed. Emily Carter remained seated on the muddy roadside, her face pale but determined. The crowd had grown into thousands, spilling across sidewalks, chanting her name. News helicopters hovered overhead, broadcasting the scene live across the nation. Then, a hush fell over the crowd as a black limousine pulled up. The door opened, and Miles Hayes, the CEO himself, stepped out. Dressed in a tailored suit, his face was tense, his eyes heavy with the weight of the moment. Emily looked up, her gaze steady. Miles walked toward her, each step echoing louder than the chants. He stopped just a few feet away, the cameras capturing every detail. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then Miles spoke, his voice low but clear. "Emily Carter, I came here today not as a CEO, but as a man. What happened to you was wrong. My wife's actions were careless, and I take responsibility. I apologize." The crowd erupted in cheers, some crying, others clapping. Emily's lips trembled, her eyes glistening. She had waited for this moment, and now the apology had come. The crowd's cheers echoed through the streets as Miles Hayes stood before Emily Carter, his apology hanging in the air like a turning point in history. Emily's eyes filled with tears, not of weakness, but of relief. Slowly, she placed her hands on the ground and rose to her feet, her dignity intact, her spirit unbroken. The cameras captured every second, the billionaire CEO bowing his head, the pregnant woman standing tall, and the crowd erupting in celebration. For once, power bent to humility. Miles extended his hand. Emily hesitated, then accepted it. "This isn't just about me," she said softly, her voice carrying over the crowd. "It's about respect for every person who's been ignored, dismissed, or humiliated. Today, you showed that even the powerful can listen." Miles nodded, his face solemn. "You reminded me of something I had forgotten. Humanity." The crowd roared, chanting Emily's name. Reporters declared it a moment of justice, a story that would inspire millions. As Emily walked away, supported by the people around her, she knew her stand had changed more than her own life. It had changed the city. It had changed the CEO. And it had changed the way power and dignity would be remembered.